Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. Thank you once. And let me start by apologizing for my absence last week. It was entirely unavoidable, and I trust that the program that filled in was satisfactory. And further, I trust that we'll make up this week for what we missed last week. As you will see on the screen earlier, what we're discussing this evening, challenges and issues in the making of a new political party, and some people like to think of a new movement. The guest tonight, and let me say the new political party we're talking about, a new and united Guyana. A couple of weeks ago we had two of the leaders of that party on television, and this evening we have two of the other leaders of the party, nothing to do with age, just on opposite sides of the spectrum. Mr. Keiran Jaboor, and well-known politician, former speaker, attorney at law, commentator, and now version 2 politician, Mr. Ralph Ramkarran. Gentlemen, welcome to Plain Talk.
Thank you.
How is this party doing? It was obviously taken by surprise after the vote of no confidence on December 21, 2018. It found itself having had to accelerate its program to launch. How have you been making up that time?
Well, we did intend to launch in January, but probably in the latter part of January, around this time. And we, because of the issues arising from the no confidence motion, we had to bring it forward a few weeks. But we're doing well. We're planning our managerial and construction issues. We have to get our national conference going. We need to get our rules sorted. At the same time, we have to plan our campaign because elections can come at any time, as early as March. So a lot of things are going on. We need to also recruit enough members to make a credible showing.
You need 300 signatures for your list.
Yes, so all of that is being discussed in the pot. All of that is in the pot at the current time.
Mr. Jaboor?
Well, as the public may have noticed, I came on just after the January unofficial launch, when it was, I think, brought out in the papers on Christmas Day.
Yes.
I had come on a little bit after that, but nonetheless, as Ralph, explained, we're in our construction stages. We're making rapid progress to get this party, to get our wings stretched and reach across Guyana and kind of get a feel. I think, as you noticed, our symbol is a cell phone. Mm-hmm. And with that cell phone, it has a lot to do with us listening. We're listening to Guyana. So as much as we have our work to do on the ground, we're also opening our ears and reaching out to people and, trying to quickly as possible gather information that will help us form our party and our manifesto and put this party into fruition.
Let me ask you, you mentioned the Christmas Day. Now, the Christmas Day announcement seems to have had some setbacks for one of the leaders of your party, Mr. Timothy Jonas. That he had been called and notified that he was going to be conferred with silk, meaning he was going to become a senior counsel, and that after the appearance of the article in the newspapers, he was unceremoniously dumped from that elite list. Is that correct?
Well, of course it's not correct.
No, is it correct that that is what happened?
That is correct. He was telephoned by Mr. Vic Prasad and told that his name had been submitted, and he's making the offer of silk, and would he accept? And of course Vic speaks on behalf of the office of the president.
Yes. He's a protocol officer.
Protocol officer.
That's correct.
Officer of the president. And Tim said yes, and he went away on his Christmas holidays. And a few days after he came back, Vic rang again and said, "I'm sorry to have to inform you that the offer was withdrawn. No reason was given." And that was it. That happened.
The first act of victimization on one of your leaders.
Well, it was not the first act. I mean, we had with us Terence Campbell, a prominent businessman, and he, I don't know, that occurred, I think, a bit after, yes, after Tim's event. Tim's event was not publicized.
Yes,
and he didn't inform us right away.
It only came out afterwards.
Yeah, and he didn't inform us right away. It took him a week or so to inform myself and Henry Jeffrey, and then we kept it quiet. So at his request. But Terence Campbell was attacked. His business was attacked. There was a Facebook attack on him that calling on people to boycott his business. And you know, he has extensive customer-based businesses, and he was forced to
now,
withdraw.
And I'm not leaving you out of this, Mr.
No.
Jaboor, but on this particular issue of Mr. Jonas. Now, who would have made that decision to revoke that invitation to Mr. Timothy Jonas?
Well, I don't know of the decision-making process in the government.
But the recommendation is
but-
made to whom?
But the chief, as far as I
Chancellor?
understand the position, the chancellor submits a list to the attorney general, who transmits that list to the office of the president, where the president makes the decision. Basil Williams,
And he is the decider in this matter.
well, he has to be assumed to be the decider.
He's constitutionally
Yes,
the
it's
decider.
it's his decision. And Mr. Basil Williams, the Attorney General, said in his response to this matter that names had gone up to the president, that lists had gone up to the president, who included other names. And he mentioned Mr. Fitzpeters and some other person who I didn't remember. He said that Fitzpeters was not on any list submitted by the Chancellor, but Fitzpeters was awarded silk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think he deserves silk. I know Mr. Peters very well, and I think it was a deserving appointment.
Yes.
But so that at some point after the list is submitted by the Chancellor, names are added, and apparently now names are taken off. Now we know names are taken off.
Now, is this the same kind of political culture that confronted Nigel Hughes, and whether or not he would ever get silk?
Nigel Hughes his name is first. Nigel Hughes is long deserving of the conferment of silk. Let me get that out of the way. But his case is very odd, because he was former President Jaboor said publicly that he would not give him silk, and the reason he gave, he does drug cases, defends people accused of drug offenses,
Which is
And-
not a problem.
which is not a reason.
That's correct.
Lawyers are free to defend who they want. Now, he's still not being offered silk, and I questioned it from a high authority. I questioned the issue of as to when people like Stephen Fraser and Nigel Hughes are going to be awarded silk, and I was told that the persons who had been left back from the previous administration, not having awarded any for 20 years, those people are now going to be awarded, and everybody has to wait his and her turn. Well, the turn of Nigel Hughes has come because his colleague, Stephen Fraser,
And
was-
Pollard and Andrew Pollard.
and Andrew Pollard were both awarded silk, and Nigel was left out. It is inexplicable. I cannot explain it. I don't know the reason, and none has been given.
So you've had two acts of victimization already. You're well established. I don't think you need to bother about victimization. You, Mr. Jaboor, why would you want to join? Why do you think you have the determination and the backbone and the courage to withstand what will be obvious and increasing pressure on you?
I'm actually asked that question fairly often now that I'm so new into this political arena, and my best answer can be, because this is happening, I feel something needs to be done in some way in order to break the norm, if you will. All right, we are stuck in a system here that we've been doing for far beyond even my years. I'm somewhat of a young chap, and
you're young. You don't need to qualify. Certainly among
he's too young.
between the two of us. Yes, go on.
Yeah. So I feel that as we grow and we develop in this country as a youth, if we continue on the path that we're headed down, what will change and how will it change? So as me coming into a process like this, and I always say, I'm in no way, shape, or form believe that I'm the only one capable of doing this, or I may even be the best person for this position. But my true hope and what I hope to bring from this is at least encouragement for others to step forward and get involved and help to change a system that we are stuck in. All right, and I believe if you want me to get into a little bit more detail, I would actually say,
go on.
Education is our backbone in the society, and I feel that most of our issues as they happen in Guyana, and because a lot of people are being victimized and a lot of issues are created, we need to take an act to step forward and say, for the voiceless, this is what needs to happen, this is why it's happening, open their eyes and show everybody, if anything at all, just shed light on the situation, and hopefully we can come together in unity and create a different system and get out of this old one.
You did say that you don't overestimate yourself and what you can do in the day of others. But why, and I'm putting this question to you too, Mr. Ramkarran, because you've been in this, you've done it, you've seen the
worst.
The nastiness,
Yeah,
let's put
the
it
worst.
bluntly, of politics and the political culture in Guyana. Why do you want to come back into this type of thing? And I'm going to ask you, and I'll answer the same question. Why do you want to enter it, Mr. Jaboor?
I didn't want to come back. When I left politics in 2012, my full intention was to retire completely from political life. As a matter of fact, I retired in some controversy. In fact, my resignation from the PPP was not a voluntary one, it was forced. But I had intended, and I had indicated to several people in the leadership of the PPP, that I did not intend to contest a seat on the Central Committee after the elections of 2011. Now, the party congress had not yet been held after 2011. So I was waiting my time to depart quietly without contesting a seat. But my resignation was, as we all know, forced. Now, in the 6 years that have elapsed, we have witnessed controversy after controversy. The political instability continues, and there is no end in sight. What triggered my interest in a revival of political activity was the coalition of the Alliance for Change with the APNU and the formation of a coalition government, and the consequences of that. Instead of the AFC holding the APNU to the book and to the manifesto and to the things that APNU said it believed in, which many people had felt would happen,
And what AFC held as fundamental values as well.
Yes, and people were enthusiastic. A lot of people were enthusiastic, especially APNU, especially AFC supporters. But we saw very rapidly, very quickly, that the AFC completely collapsed, became supine, and did absolutely nothing to tame the activities of APNU, which were a lot of what had gone on before were repeated. So that was what troubled some of us. And as we looked at this situation, myself and friends and others, we became increasingly distressed. And nothing was being done or said to which appeared to have any impact on the political situation to change it.
So why do you think you'll
because
create that
we're
impact?
offering something completely new and completely different. We're saying that, stressing the word unity, our plan is to implement reforms to the Constitution to bring together the two major forces
That's
in
the same.
government.
That's the same thing the AFC said. That's the same thing the WPA
They
has
did
been
say.
saying for decades.
They were saying that. The WPA was never in a position of political power to implement or to encourage
But
the
in this
implementation.
coalition, it has some voice.
It has.
It boasts that it's the intellectual segment
It has
of the coalition government.
It has a modest voice. The AFC has the biggest voice, and the AFC has not pressured the government on the constitutional reform, or not pressured it sufficiently. And the AFC could have walked out of the government because this was an important and fundamental promise, and fundamental to the future of Guyana. And they allowed APNU to drag its feet on this promise, and nothing happened. So we not only are making this promise, we are committing that we will never ever join into a coalition with one of the major political
Should you
parties.
ever say never in life?
Not never. We will never ever until the political solution has occurred in Guyana.
Mr. Jaboor, why you? Beginning of a career, relatively. Why?
Well, just as on a personal note, I never really had interest in a political career at any point. I've always been very, I've always voiced my opinion to those around me and those near me, but never have I ever thought I would come public with anything of the sort. Guyana is in a very, very, very unique position now. Between the incumbent oil and our political instability and what is currently evolving in our society. So I believe we have a very unique opportunity now to get change made, as Ralph just mentioned. There's the opportunity now for Guyana to come together and have our voices heard and make a relevant change in our political system in order for the better of Guyana in the future. And I am here to represent those that are going to be here for the future.
Now, when we look, you said that this is the opportunity and all of this. When you look and see the intolerance and the animosity between the two major parties in this country, you see the tit for tat, you see the politics of revenge, and they control 95% of the votes. How realistic is it that you can change that? This is a culture, Ralph, we've been around for decades and decades.
Well,
It's always been that way.
yes, it's always been that way because the political culture based on ethnicity has never changed. That has always been that way. And what the parties are doing is merely reflecting the society in which we exist. People are terrified when one side wins and the other side loses. People feel that their entire existence is affected. Their whole life is affected when one person loses and when one group loses and the other group wins. And that drives this great hostility between the two parties. So it's not that they're just hostile and bad people are become politicians. It's they're reflecting the fears and the anxieties of their supporters.
But isn't that what leadership is about, to say that, look, this is not the way to develop, and to say that democracy, I've got this book. I really like this book, How Democracies Die. It says, you know, on election night you shed tears. Lots of us, I didn't look at television after November 8th. I did not look at television for 5 months. Just the loss to see Donald Trump. But look, life goes on. You still have to earn your living. And we have got to start saying in this country that when you have democracy, everybody wins.
Yeah, but if politicians in Guyana say those things, they will not get votes in the next election.
So you're not prepared to say that either?
No, we are.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
We are prepared to say that, and we are prepared to show, to demonstrate that when you say that, how people win.
Yeah.
And people will win when there's a political solution in Guyana. So, yeah, go ahead.
And we will go as far as saying that we were on that path up to only our last election. We had seen, you mentioned
On which
95,
path?
a path in which we could have political stability, in which everyone can be held accountable, and we could have shared governance and the option at least of constitutional reform and change. One political party decided to join another for their own motives. But what I will say to this is you mentioned 95% are represented by these two parties, and
Yes.
they're represented. It shows that way because there's no one else competing. So the matter of fact is 100%. But the fact of the matter is,
there have been lots of people competing.
but
lots of people compete. There have been lots of new parties.
and how far has the AFC made it? I think their highest number of seats they had won at one point was 7 or 8.
7.
If I'm not mistaken.
7, I think they got 6
Yeah,
only. No?
7, yeah. So that by itself goes to show that there is a sect of society, and culturally that is changing, that see that there needs to be other paths, and we need to say, as Ralph mentioned, we are different, and we need to show that we can offer what Guyana is lacking. I'm not saying that everyone needs to jump on board at all times and become politically involved, but what I'm saying is Guyana and all of its citizens need to understand the role and values of its government and realize that constitutional reform and change is necessary for us to move forward as a society and not continue on the same path we've been going for the past 52 years.
As you would know, however, the gentleman to your left led one of the largest constitutional reform processes under a legitimate arrangement, because we had the 1980 Constitution. That wasn't quite legitimate. I don't think you'd use the word legitimate to describe that. The size of the Constitution almost doubled here. It almost doubled. I was trying to do a word count today, but
okay.
it's now. Yet the culture has remained. You created all these very elaborate structures and so-called protection. Now we have a Human Rights Commission, and it has been constituted. So where are we going with constitutional reform if there is not a genuine commitment by the political leaders, by the leaders of these two juggernauts?
It's an excellent question, and my answer will always go back to my base for getting involved in politics, which is education. I think we have an issue with a detachment over the last 52 years in which the government seems to have taken control of the country and the people have lost the power. And this, I think, is where everything needs to take a step back and realize that we need to now take the power back as a nation and say, if you are not offering what you have promised, you need to be held accountable and you will be replaced accordingly. Okay, the people of Guyana need to know that they have the power, and if they want constitutional reform, it's not about sitting back and waiting for it to happen. It's not about putting a certain group of people into power and then hoping they do it. You have to make them do it. You have to make them accountable.
How do you do that in this society? They've been not only calls, they've been promises, they've been commitments, 100-day commitment and all of those things. How do you...
Well, we are asking...
What hope can we give the viewers out there?
Let us give the viewers this hope. we are asking the people of Guyana to vote us in office, to give us the majority vote. We are telling the people of Guyana that if we fail to observe our promise
As a majority?
yes.
Now, what if you don't get a majority?
Okay? If we don't get a majority, we are asking them to give us enough votes to hold the balance of power, so that the party which obtains the plurality will have to rely on our support to stay in office. And if for that support, the first item on the agenda will be the creation of a system of governance that includes all the major political parties. We are different to any third party that has come before, with the exception of the United Force in the 60s. We are not arguing that these two behemoths must get out of office. We are arguing for these two behemoths to share power, so that Indian Guyanese who support one party will have their party in power. African Guyanese who support the other party will also have their party in power. So at the end of elections, people don't feel as if their entire existence is destroyed and forever harmed.
Yeah, I just to touch on Ralph's point there, that's why we're different is because if you know that two others have made promises and not fulfilled their promises, it's not the best idea is not to make a U-turn. You have to try again, and we will continue to try as a nation until we get it right.
I have a slightly, maybe fundamentally different view. My view is, look, if these guys have been around, it was the PPP Bornamite in 57, but I think sometime immediately after it became PNC. They have never been able to agree on anything. On anything. What makes you think that you're going to get them to agree? Putting them around the table probably is going to be great luck. How do you create that tie-breaking
The
mechanism?
answer is simple. Both parties have agreed to inclusive governance involving both parties. Now that's a step forward.
That's Hoyt brought that. Hoyt agreed with it.
When Hoyt agreed in 2001 or 2002, that was a major development in the history of Guyana, because
That's correct.
So only the PPP had been saying that, and Hoyt came on board in 2001. Now nothing happened. So the APNU, PNC under the umbrella of APNU, has now come forward and made constitutional reform proposals of a substantial and substantive nature.
Who has done that?
APNU AFC
When is this?
in the manifesto.
Oh no, they said they're going to do it. They didn't make any
Yeah.
proposal.
Oh yes, yes. They said they're going to, and they made proposals of how they want to change the stuff. Now that has never happened before. Today, Mr. Jagdeo has said, one, he did said two things. He said that he's having a big tent. He's inviting APNU, our parties, smaller parties, and civil society to join in his big tent. He says he agrees with constitutional reform, but he does not agree with imposing a solution. Well, nobody agrees with that. I mean, that's acceptable. So we are on this process is not going to finish suddenly going to convince people and it's going to happen. The process has advanced from 2000, 2001. And here we are, both parties are now committed. So we have to make the final drive, the final effort, and squeeze them by the you-know-what after we get
Let's keep it the gender thing.
gender neutral.
Yes.
After the electorate has given us the power to make the final push. That's what we're asking.
All right. I'm sure viewers probably would like, because you're aware that tomorrow Chief Justice acting Madam Roxanne George is going to be ruling on the three matters that have arisen out of the December 21 motion of no confidence that was successfully passed. It was brought by the PPP, I think the leader of the opposition, and it earned the support of a single APNU AFC member, Mr. Charan Dasperson. Either of you can ask this question, but I need your legal kind of background and answer, Ralph. What do you expect to happen?
I expect the Chief Justice to. There are three issues before the Chief Justice.
Yes.
In three separate cases. One is the validity of the vote in terms of the count.
One is whether majority is
34 or 30.
I mean, that is so laughable that
Okay. The other one is whether Charan Das Prasad had the legal authority to vote, having been having dual citizenship.
yes,
And the third one is your case, calling for
declarations.
calling for a declaration that the vote was valid, lawful, and for the government to resign. I think the Chief Justice is going to rule against the government on their argument that the valid majority is 34. That, I don't think anybody thinks that make any sense. And I don't see why the Chief Justice would.
The Attorney General did.
Well, I mean, apart from the Attorney General.
Mr. Nigel Hughes did.
And well, if you
There are
look
lots
at-
of parts, apart from.
if you look at what has been playing out in the newspapers and popular opinion and that kind of thing, I think the general impression, the general understanding is most people.
It's not going anywhere.
I don't think that's going anywhere. And the issue of the legality of Charan Das Prasad's vote is clearly set out in Article 163(2) of the Constitution, which protects people who have some flaw in their appointment, protects the validity of that vote. So that even if Charan Das Prasad was not entitled to be there, his vote is protected by 163(2). So I don't think that, and these provisions are not capable of multiple interpretations. They're
You'll come back to that. I'll ask you to continue. But we hear, the framers of the Constitution. But the framers, we're lucky. You hear in the U.S., the framers of the Constitution. Well, Madison, all them dead.
yeah.
But at least we're fortunate to have the framers of our modified 1980 Constitution around.
Yeah.
So tell me, you mentioned two. What about the third one?
And the third issue basically combines all for the resignation of the government. Now, several issues have turned on this Article 106. One is that there's a contradiction between the cabinet and the president resigning and the government remaining in office. That's one argument.
But it's just an argument because they are separate creatures in the Constitution.
I was going to mention that, which you answered. The cabinet and the cabinet and president are defined in the Constitution. The cabinet is defined.
Yes.
And the government, while not being defined, includes people like junior ministers and so on, who are not in the cabinet.
The parliamentary government.
Yes,
That's what
the
we're talking about.
parliamentary government. So that the government remains in office. So that answers the argument. Your answer answers the argument. The question is, when do they resign? And what are their powers? Now, if a cabinet does not...
As one of the
exist-
framers, you better tell us.
As the cabinet not being in existence, it cannot aid and advise the president. There's nothing to aid and advise the president. And there's nothing... So the president...
It can't act under the Procurement Act, for example.
Yes.
It cannot
So-
set up that finance committee that is authorized to carry out.
Yes.
Because it doesn't exist.
It does, yes. So that all that remains to be done is for the ministers to implement the decisions which have already been made.
Yes.
And which are proceeding, which they have to administer their ministry.
The ministers and their executive, the
And-
permanent secretaries
Yes.
and heads of department.
Yeah. So, and that is the effect, that is what is called, it's not a term of art, that is what is a caretaker government.
So you said earlier, now, in those terms, expressed in those terms, this thing is as clear as day. The Constitution is written in what is called plain English.
Yeah.
Nobody, I mean, shall resign. Everybody knows, and some legal principles as to shall and will and may and so on. Now, what does this say? You said we have had improvements and enhancements in political behavior or culture. But if people refuse to do things that are so blatantly and clearly, and as Burnham would say, pellucid on the face, what kind of political culture is that?
Well, I mean, you're quite right. This is not a political culture that, by any means, an advanced political culture. An advanced political culture, the government would have resigned. But that has not happened, and you know, this is for partisan political advantage.
My question to you, then, quickly to sum up, where you think all three decisions, where are we going?
Well, I think the Chief Justice will rule in favor against the government in all three cases.
All three.
And I think that the government will then promptly have to resign, because the Chief Justice cannot give a stay of execution, because she cannot extend the time under the Constitution for the government to
The court can't go above the Constitution anyway. It says it says 3 months.
Hopefully, if the Chief Justice rules against the government, as I expect and as we expect, hopefully we'll see the resignation of the government, and that the Elections Commission will begin planning for the elections.
Which they should have done.
Which they should have been doing all along.
Since November 14th,
Yeah.
they knew there was a motion of no confidence. They must know the implications, whatever the possibility. And it was a fairly close possibility. One vote
Yeah.
could have changed it.
The wheels need to start turning.
Sensible, practical people committed to carry out their functions under 162 of the Constitution should have had no hesitation and should have been preparing from the day it became known that there was a motion of no confidence. Now, Mr. Jaboor, let us say that Mr. Ralph Ramkarran is correct in his prediction, and we have only a matter of 18 hours perhaps to find out. And the government still decides we're going to play hardball by saying, oh, as Ram Jatan has said, we're taking it today all the way. What does that say about democracy? A democracy that says, look, you have to accept wins and losses. That's part of that's part of what development is. And I come back to this. We all benefit from democracy. There should be no winners and losers. We're all winners.
Correct.
What would it say to you?
Well, you know,
if this government were to say, because they're a significant player, we end playing by no rules.
Right. Well, you see, again, that gets back to our framework. First of all, I truly hope that that Ralph's predictions do come
No,
true.
but my thing is, let us say it doesn't come.
Just based on the fact that the kind of worms that it will open, we don't even want to get into details on, right? So, and that I think is what the basis of if this government decides they're going to see it through to the end, as you said. This problem will mean...
Said without supporting the idea.
Said without supporting the idea.
I'm saying, get on with the elections.
Correct. So as the future of Guyana, and this all ties back in, and this is what I think everybody needs to see as a big picture. This all now ties back in to the future of Guyana and why these rules and the system needs to be changed internally. And this is what this party is proposing with its constitutional reform. There cannot be laws in place that a government goes in and feels that they have the power to disobey because they are in office. That cannot exist anymore. So, as Ralph had mentioned, we need to take steps now to uphold our political, to hold our governmental structure and to uphold our laws that govern this country, right? And when you're asking me what are we going to do if they decide to do that, but
I'm asking you, what signal is it going to send to you as a young politician?
Well, as an optimistic person, I'm going to say it signals that this party doesn't have Guyana at its heart. And honestly, I'm not going to sit down here and speak for all the parties or all of Guyana, because this is one group of people making one decision.
No, I'm asking you what you will think if a certain situation would happen. That was my question. Now,
Okay.
we want to move on. We got about 21 minutes more for the program. You talk about constitutional reform. What exactly do you mean by constitutional reform? Name the 3 to 6 most specific things that we're talking about in constitutional reform.
I'm gonna go.
Well, the fundamental principle we would like the country to address, and we would like to address, is a system whereby the 2 major political forces in the country, representing the 2 major ethnic groups, share political office. Subsidiary issues in
Ralph, let me ask you this. What happens with the opposition? What if these 2 people conspire to screw the country as they've done in the past? How do you deal with that?
We form a party and
We will form-
enter
we
the
will-
political arena.
We will be the opposition. One, we will be the opposition. So there will be an opposition.
No, but you want
But
to
the
be part.
problem-
Don't you want to be part of that big inclusive government too?
No,
don't you?
no, not at all.
So even if there's an inclusive government which you're advocating, you're saying you
we
will stand
then,
out of it.
We will then have to decide. The party will then have to decide what role it will play. Our
no,
party.
but don't you think at this stage you should have done that?
Could be. Well, no. Our immediate objective is to ensure that the reform takes place and the government takes place. And during this period, we will not join with any political party to keep that party in office to the exclusion of the other.
Okay, I take one. Inclusive government. What else?
Well, we need to address the issue of the presidency. I'm not sure how that is to be addressed because we have 2 major race groups. One says a minority race group might well say, you mean our leader will
Shut out permanently?
never ever be president? We have other ethnicities in Guyana like Amerindian. We have women. Remember, these are modern times we're going into now. And we have an opportunity.
We've been
to
modern
fix
times
these
a long time ago. We haven't realized it.
things. We have the opportunity now to fix things that countries are still, even large countries are still struggling with. We have Amerindian community. We have women. We have youth. All of these groups exist. And all of these groups can find a way to share into the power system that we create. So we have
So the executive president. So
the nature of the
are you in
executive
fa-
is up for this.
Are you in
discussion.
favor of an executive president? Is ANA going to be in
As a
favor?
party, we have not decided
Yeah.
that as yet. As a party, we have not decided that. You've seen in today's papers that Henry Jeffrey has been advocating the Swiss model of an executive that has a chief executive once a year,
Rotating.
rotating executive. He has advocated that model. We have not all.
Is he
gone
speaking
there.
for the party there?
No, he's not speaking for the party. So we haven't decided on specifically on a system as yet.
When you see what's happening now and the role of President Granger resigning to himself and practically deciding, are you seriously
that does not suit Guyana.
not going to say
That-
we cannot have this situation?
That system does not suit Guyana.
The man is accountable only to himself.
Well, that's the
Whoever
problem.
holds that position.
Yeah.
That system
That
no
cannot be
longer
accepted.
suits. That system does not suit
In
Guyana.
fact, it seems to be in violation of Article 1. Democratic society, nobody can be so powerful, practically above the law.
Correct.
All right, so executive presidency. Let me see one more. What else? Tell me.
Well, we are also talking. My proposal is that our discourse on reform of the Constitution can start from the proposals made by the APNU. It will not necessarily end there, but we can start from those basic proposals. And one proposal is that all political parties obtaining 15% or over of the votes would be entitled to share in the government. So a political party can potentially earn more than 15%. Our party, if we don't get an absolute majority, we might get over 15%. So we would be entitled to share in the government, and all the other smaller parties. Would be
And then you're going to say no, that I'm not sharing in the government.
well, we have to decide that. My preference is to stay in the opposition. That my personal preference would be to stay in the remain in the opposition, and let the two large parties
Stay as the balance,
run the
yeah.
show.
Yep.
But then you see, I'm not a young person. The young people might have a different view. They might want to get in there and do things, be in the executive, and make changes. They might want to do that.
But the party has got to come to a position.
We have
Yeah.
You,
got
you
to come
can't
to-
you can't go to the electorate, and if things work as they should, we are now 40 days into that 90 days. You are, if we stick to the constitutional requirement, we have just 18 days to nomination. Immediate, even before nomination, but certainly on around nomination, you should be going to people and say, this is our slate and this is what we stand for. You don't have time.
No, I agree with you.
And we are, I want to say, we are very,
Go
very
on.
close to, we have short-term goals and we have long-term goals. And that has to do with constitutional reform. And in event we were to gain, a government role, then we would have those outlined. But the fact of the matter is, at this point in time, as Ralph is trying to explain, we are currently sitting down getting our manifesto together. We are currently as a party coming together, inviting new members to come in and taking opinions and putting them together in order to form our party's platform.
Well, I don't want to press you more since you're doing, but there's a clear issue about this devolution of power. You have, and you're talking here, the APNU, and the PPP sitting in Georgetown. Well, the PPP does have a strong rural base. Sitting in Georgetown and making decisions touching on the lives in Region 1 and Region 9 and Region 4 and Region 10 and Region 6. And those people having practically no say. What kind of inclusivity is this?
Well, the principle enunciated by Henry Jeffrey in his article today, a principle around which we can all rally, is that the center should not do anything that the local communities can do.
Well, that's
As
more
a
easily.
basic principle.
No, but that's more easily said than done.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they can the regions can raise taxes.
Yeah.
The center can say, no, we want to control the budget. Until you change the political culture. Now, I want to ask you, you said that let's go to the APNU AFC manifesto. And I'm not leaving you out, but you're going to find with a party, with a group of old people, you're going to get that a lot.
Go ahead, I'm learning.
Because, yeah, it is a learning experience.
Absolutely.
And I would suggest you read the Constitution Reform Commission report. And that's what I'm going to ask you about. Why don't we use several of those recommendations that the PPP and the PNC are, in their own respective ways, refuse to carry out, to refuse to embrace? Isn't that the starting point we should have? Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. One very, very important one that people are talking about is the implementation of first past the post, partial first past the post system. Everybody agrees to that. And the two political parties did it half-heartedly or haphazardly, I would say, and gave us seats on the regional seats, but that's not the real thing. That was just a temporary, it was, at the time it was done, it was understood to be temporary, a temporary measure. So that is something both parties agreed to, but they have not implemented, and that's a fundamental issue for the Guyanese
But
people.
listen, this particular, and we know the history. That's the problem with my age. I've gone through this debate. I know the days when we had first past the post, and you had gerrymandering, and you had all kinds of problems with boundaries and so
But
on.
there's a basic, the
regions?
no, The Constitution says half the seats of Guyana.
Okay.
Laws can be made, and the last.
So you're asking for
election-
mixes. You want a mix system?
Yes, and the
Okay,
last
good.
election.
No, I thought you were asking for pure PR.
No. The last elections on the first past the post had 32 constituencies.
Yes.
And the Constitution says you can divide the country in half the seats can be
Yes,
run by
yes.
force. So we have the boundaries already there historically.
Right.
Mhm.
The historical boundaries are already drawn up.
Yeah, but now something that stands out for me, and I'm asking you what position you will take on this. The ownership and control of the media by the government. Does the ANUG have an emphatic position on this?
The ANUG does not have an emphatic position, but my personal position is it has up to the end of the PPP government, I had always advocated that the government needs a national newspaper. I am now convinced that that newspaper should be privatized, the Guyana Chronicle, as a start.
What about television?
Well, I'm not too sure about the television.
But why not?
There-
Isn't it the same principle?
Well, there is the BBC which works. In the United Kingdom, there is no state newspaper.
Ralph, that
But-
is an 800-year democracy you're talking about.
that's true.
I mean, Cromwell, it's not so many years, not 800, but you're talking a different thing.
But we have the television, the program, the government television program does not behave in the way that the Guyana Chronicle has behaved consistently since the time it was taken over by the PNC under Burnham.
Have you
It
been?
is
Have you tried to get time on NCN?
No.
Have they invited you?
No.
Why haven't you asked for time?
Well, you haven't gotten around to that.
Well, we haven't quite gotten across that road, but I mean, this gets into the privatization
you, what do you think-
state-owned, you know.
Well, don't call it. I don't see it as privatization. I mean, obviously, you will have to privatize or close down. But I am asking you whether you see a role in a country and a society in which you want everything liberalized, but yet you don't want the media to be liberalized.
But-
There's something inconsistent.
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. But this is where it gets back to, of control, of keeping people in the dark as to what the real issues are, and controlling the information that you leak to them slowly to get the result that you want in the end. So, by all means, as Ralph mentioned, I mean, yes, I think I can firmly believe as well that it should be privatized.
The
in
entire
sense-
state-
the
state
the media in general.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing for a government to not take time or allocate spaces on different media stations to get their message or
That's
the
right.
necessary information out.
Complete
So
with-
why does it
different-
need to be run by the state?
And let me say, I'm asking these questions because this is how I am testing political parties. Anybody who wants my support, I'm going to be asking these questions. Now, you mentioned early, Keiran, about oil. This reprehensible, abominable, unjustified contract signed June 2016 after the discovery of oil that binds all governments coming after. Is the ANUG going to at least look into the possibility of the renegotiation of those objectionable and obnoxious articles in the oil petroleum agreement?
Well, we certainly will look at it. We haven't come to a position as yet, but it's on our agenda for us to take a position on. We're not going to evade or avoid taking a position on the contract, which is a burning issue in Guyana. So it's something that we intend to look at and intend to pronounce upon.
And very importantly, just to add on to Ralph's, we have spoken about it numerous times, and what I think is very important and for investor confidence in this country is that any position we do take will be within the laws of Guyana. We've spoken about it numerous times, and we believe that as much as the ones previous to us may have, made a bad decision due to their lack of experience, we cannot walk in and proclaim that we are the overall bearing decision. It has to be done within the laws of Guyana. All right? Anything coming after, we will consider on a different level. But as far as we're concerned, I believe we discussed anything that happens, even getting down to our dual citizenship, everything needs to be done within the laws of Guyana.
Well, within the laws, and you're one of your leaders, Mr. Timothy Jonas, talks about the sanctity of contracts. But if you've got a contract that is so lopsided, that's so anti-country, that you could end up just 14.25% of the revenue. Forget what this man has said in two papers a couple of days ago, that Guyana can get 60%. Under no circumstances will Guyana get 60%. That is sheer propaganda and mischief. So, again, part of the challenge, and we did say challenges and issues, political parties have made up and brilliant young and not so young people with strong views. This is why you go into politics. You go into politics because of ego, because of confidence, because of a sense of patriotism, because of a sense of wanting to help others. Yeah. But you're going to get serious clashes of personalities and opinions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, and that comes with development. That comes with this type of situation.
You don't want to mention that you faced any of those as yet.
No, we have sharp discussion. We have sharp discourses.
I love your diplomatic language. This question of gender. Now, as you know, the Representation of the People's Act is very specific. It sets serious targets, not only targets, quotas. And it's a sad thing that in a country we still have to have quotas to give women their legitimate rights. I think it's a tragedy. As an issue, how is ANUG coping with that particular matter? So far, I've had leaders who are only men.
We have made progress. We have made progress. We have had interest being displayed by women. We have had women offering to help. We have had women helping. We have women in our team, leadership team. Now, unfortunately, the same problem we encountered at the beginning, and the same problem that Timothy Jonas mentioned at our launching, the same problem exists. They're all working, and they do not wish their names to go forward. That's the problem.
Hopefully, some of those can come and play dog or something. I want to deal with two issues, yes or no, because we got about 80 seconds. Article 155, adherence, obedience, and to a foreign state, interpreted to mean dual citizenship. All the decisions in courts, Australia, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, you can't do it. You can't make laws for this country when you have some kind of allegiance or another. Is the INA going to respect that to the letter and the spirit?
Yes. I guess I could answer as one of the two dual citizens in the steering committee at the moment. The fact of the matter is we have expressed ourselves already publicly that we will, coming into the political party as if we were to step into parliament, we will obey the laws of Guyana.
No.
It will not.
Keiran, as Mr. Ramkarran will tell you, it is on nomination day. Yeah. That will have had to be completed.
And yes, the answer to that again will be yes. We will abide by the laws of Guyana, but we will publicly state, as we did, that we will advocate for it, for the change of it, and we'd like to see it
let me say this.
Changed.
If you do it, I will personally congratulate you.
Oh,
Lennox Schumann. No, you can step aside. Lennox Schumann has also said that he was going to do it. So I from now I congratulate you, and I will hold you to that. Elections expenses, campaign financing. The law is very clear as to what you can spend and what you can't spend. Every political party has been violating the Representation of the People's Act. are you going to stick to the limits set in the law?
Well, we're law-abiding citizens, and we hope to be a
Yes.
law-abiding
A
party.
political party is not even a legal entity, and maybe you can say whether you will advocate and demand, if you can, that political parties be subject to statutory regulations.
Well, we agree in principle that political parties should be regulated. We don't have a problem with that, and we agree that the
Will you
finance
table
regulations,
legislation in the National Assembly for that?
we agree, and it's part of our discussions up to yesterday about election financing laws, which we support.
And the law as it is, are you going to comply with the law in relation
We
to?
will have to look at
Yes.
the law. We'll have to examine the law.
No, but
and-
can't you give an
and-
unqualified answer that I will comply with the, we will comply with the law?
At the
We,
very
we
moment.
comply with all laws.
We will follow all laws.
Law-abiding
I don't-
citizens.
You're not going to ask us if we're going to break the law. The answer is no, we will not be breaking the law.
Again, I think Plain Talk is here for a little while longer, and we will hold you to that. Mr. Keiran, Jaboor, Mr. Ralph Ramkarran, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
And
Having us.
as I said, I congratulate you, young man, for that very bold and courageous step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Operators and viewers, thank you, good night, and I'll see you next week.